Hello, welcome to Hat Trick. I'm Jordan Coltman, joined by Braydon Coltman and Elliott Tanti. We are back after a week off. Boys, lots is going on. We're going to talk about the World Cup, which is already into the round of 16. Lots to discuss there. We'll talk about the Oilers and a little bit of hockey talk, and then we're going to do some hats off. It's been a little while, though, so why not waste any more time? Let's get right to it. This is topic one. Okay, topic one. Right off the hop, we have had 2 busy weeks of football, soccer. The World Cup well underway now. We've moved past the group stages. We didn't have a show last week, so I wanted to take a step back before we kind of get into what we are currently looking at here in the round of 16. Let's spend a quick moment talking about Canada's performance, because obviously, that was a big storyline for all of Canada to be excited to see the Canadian men's team back in the World Cup for the first time since the 80s. Obviously very exciting. Unfortunately for Canada, they were unable to get a victory in any of their 3 games. They did score 2 goals, which was historic considering the first was the first they'd ever scored. So they get 2 goals out of it. Difficult couple games there, but definitely some important learning going on. And I think that in many ways, that's really all we could be hoping for, considering this is a very new experience for these players, and that they are guaranteed a spot in the next World Cup, regardless of how they qualify, because they're a co-host in 4 years' time, as it's a North American World Cup. Elliott, we talked the last time we spoke about our expectations. You were hoping they would score. That was kind of as far as you were willing to go. I think you would have loved to see them win. And obviously they did have some pretty good showings against Belgium and Morocco, a difficult game against Croatia. But let's talk about it. How do you feel they played overall, having watched them qualify, watching this team kind of come together, and then the actual performance? You get 3 games and you show what you got to the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just that, right? And Canada showed up. And I think people were at first surprised that they'd even made it. And then when we made it, I think Canada, had an opportunity to show the entire world that this is an emerging soccer nation and that they should be respected, and that they've got some incredible players on their team, and that there's a bright future ahead of them. Obviously, it was disappointing not to get a result, but I think scoring the 2 goals, particularly after the missed penalty kick in game 1 against Belgium, I think coming back and being able to show that you can score at this level was really important and good for the team. And ultimately, it's a great experience, as you said, right? Like, what do we keep going back to when we've been talking about this? Like, this is just the tune-up. This is the tune-up. What we're looking for is what this team's like in 4 years, and they've got this experience under their belt, so it won't be the first time. The next time they're in the World Cup, and I think that's really great and exciting. So, ups and downs. I thought they probably deserve better against Belgium. But they also got an opportunity to see what like real World Cup soccer is like, particularly when position in the elimination rounds is on the line, and they got the best of Morocco, and so that was all good too. I mean, I think it's such a positive experience for them, and I was just happy to be a fan, happy they got there, and excited for a lot more.
Well, and obviously we talked about what they should expect, or how we thought they might play coming out of the gates, and there's the big bright lights. None of these guys, the majority of the best players on these teams, are not they're familiar with big stages. Certainly Alphonso Davies playing in one of the biggest leagues for one of the biggest teams in the world. It's not like they haven't played in front of loud stadiums before. However, there's something different about being at the World Cup, representing your country, the pomp and circumstance of the Canadian anthem and all of the pregame energy in that space. And then you step on the field, and we just wondered what it would be like for them. And I would argue they actually look better in game 1 than they did the other 2 games. And I think that gives some great credit to the preparation and to how they sort of came out there. And then, as you say, they knew they were on the back foot, and they tried to throw what they could. Braydon, I don't know how many of the games you were able to catch, or how much of the rest of the tournament you've been kind of following along with, but World Cup is always an event that sort of sweeps people, even who aren't necessarily the biggest soccer or football fans, up in its sort of orbit. Has that been the case for you? Have you caught World Cup fever?
Yeah, it reminded me a lot, especially with Canada being there. It reminded me a lot of the first time the Jays were back in the playoffs. The first time the Oilers had finally made it back to the playoffs. There's a lot of excitement and anticipation, especially when your team hasn't been there in a long time. And with Canada being, not having been there for 30 some years, at least my lifetime, there was a lot of hype, a lot of excitement, and I was surprised. I didn't know what it was going to be like to play, a powerhouse like Belgium or a team like Croatia or some of these teams. You don't really know what the players are like. You don't really know what their national teams are like. But I was impressed. I was impressed with how, they didn't get absolutely blown over. I mean, the one kind of lopsided score 4-1 against Croatia. I mean, I would argue they actually were the dominant team for a good 40 minutes of that game. And once Croatia scored, the tide started to turn. But I think they had a really great showing. And I haven't watched too many other games, but one of the games I did watch was the Japan-Spain game, and watching, something like that happen where Japan absolutely shocked the team, the Spain team, coming back and scoring. It's exciting. Those kinds of stories are always exciting to watch in these big tournaments, those upsets or those big surprises.
Well, there's certainly been a few of those this tournament. This has actually been one of the more, I would argue, sort of interesting World Cups from that perspective. You've had a lot of teams that we didn't expect necessarily to get results against some of the bigger teams get them. No team went 3-0. Everyone at least found themselves with on the backside of a draw, if not a loss. So that was interesting. It shows that there's some great competitive matchups through all the group stages. And then obviously some of the biggest countries found themselves on the outside, Belgium being the one from our group, which was, I think, ranked number 2 or 3 in the world, and they're out. But the biggest one obviously being Germany, one of the most, prominent soccer nations. And I'll continue like every World Cup, they're a contender usually. And they found themselves on the backside of what, as you say, was a great Cinderella story from Japan. Elliot, I know that this is hitting a little close to home, as you have a very diehard German fan in your and an Iranian fan for that matter in your household. How has the last week and a half been from a the standpoint of the partner of a fan of a team that found themselves on, and now different than Canada, because Canada succeeding would have been a shock. In this case, Germany losing is a shock.
Yeah, it's been pretty dark in the house over here last week. Lots of frustration around whether a ball was or in or out in the Japan game. Anyway, regardless of that, it was always going to be tough for Germany this year. They're in a transition in a lot of ways. And so I think what that means is you've got the older generation that has really been the backbone of the team for a long time moving on, and a bunch of younger guys coming in. And because of that new generation isn't quite in yet, and that old generation isn't quite out yet. And so they just didn't have the same sort of uniformity that we've come to expect from Germany. So it was disappointing, but on the balance of things, maybe not as surprising to the fan invested in the sport versus someone watching from outside.
So let's talk really quickly about what we know right now. Obviously, we're recording this Sunday night. By the time most people are listening to it, the first games of Monday will already have been played. So we'll know the result of Japan, Croatia, Brazil, South Korea. However, we have already had 4 matchups in the round of 16 go and be concluded. The United States losing to the Netherlands 3-1, Argentina knocking out Australia 2-1, France winning today 3-1. Very dominant performance from Mbappe, who's clearly the best player in the world right now. And then England blanking Senegal 3-0 to advance as well. So that means we will see an Argentina-Netherlands matchup in the quarterfinals, a France-England matchup in the quarterfinals, which will be very, very electric. And then we'll wait to see what the results of the other 4 are. Knowing what we know, Elliot, knowing what you've seen so far, we'll get to some betting in a second here when we do our ad read. But in the interests of just trying to, set us up moving forward, we talked last time we spoke, France seemed to be the predominant favorite here. They probably still are, but in your mind, what have you learned about the teams that are still left that makes you feel like, who do you expect to continue to move forward?
So I would say there's a couple of things here that I'd be looking for. I think the winner of France-England has to be the favorite to come out of that side of the bracket and be there at the end. You've got good teams in Spain and Portugal on the other side, but they kind of have to go through each other before they meet the winner of that game. So I just would be keeping an eye on that piece. There's what I would say is I think I'm excited about is that there's this energy around Messi in Argentina. This is his last World Cup. At least it feels like it. The team is playing very well. Traditionally, Argentina has been a team that's been about Messi and the team second. This year, it feels like Argentina is much more team-centered. Messi, team first, Messi second. Maybe there's a world where you've got an England-Argentina final. I think that would be really exciting. But that all comes down to the play of Brazil, who's looked like the strongest side this year so far. And Brazil's always a powerhouse. So, lots of thoughts there, lots of excitement. I'm secretly cheering for Argentina, or quietly cheering for Argentina moving forward. But I know it's a long shot for sure.
How do you answer the Saudi Arabian win over that Argentina game?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's the thing that makes me all shaky ground on Argentina. I'm very much on this Netherlands team. Like, they're the high scoring team. They seem to have everything going. I think that's going to be a really exciting game to watch. Netherlands, Argentina.
Yeah, we definitely have some good matchups, regardless of how the rest of it plays out. I mean, you could have a Spain-Portugal matchup. You could have a surprising team where like a Morocco gets through there. You could have Brazil-Croatia, Brazil-Japan. And obviously, if Japan beats Croatia, they continue to be the Cinderella team. And I think their bandwagon is filling very quickly, because obviously they're endearing themselves to fans all over the world, both their own fans who are cleaning up the stadiums post matches, whether their team is playing or not. They're sticking around and cleaning up. And then obviously the photos we've also seen from inside the dressing room, where Japan's players have left the dressing room immaculate. So, it's heartwarming. It's all the good feels, and on the field, they are surprising and, outplaying, I think, expectations, which is lovely. We always like to see that. And then, when you have South Korea and Japan and Morocco and even Switzerland still in this tournament, any one of those teams upsetting the bigger seed there would definitely be it would be a great storyline. And that's what you can always hope for. So far, I think the favorites have kind of won every other matchup in the round of 16. So we'll see if any of the underdogs get their day here. We'll be back next week, I guess, to sort of see where this is all going to play out. Next weekend, we'll be on to the semifinals. Actually, we'll be getting ready for the finals by that point almost. So let's leave it there for now. Let's stop going. Okay, it's time for our pick of the week, presented by BetStamp. BetStamp is your one-stop shop for line shopping, bet tracking, and sports betting odds. Look, you would never just go with the first price if you were shopping for flights. So why would you settle for the first odds you find when you're betting? BetStamp changes that. They have streamlined the process for finding the best odds. It's an easy-to-use app. It allows you to see a wide spectrum of odds for any bet. Then it makes it easy to track your bets all in one place. You can set alerts in case the line changes. You can learn what bets your friends or even some celebrity bettors are making. So, Elliott, you have been our designated pick of the week picker, for lack of a better term, and you've had sort of one very impressive long shot hit. And obviously, you had Canada beating Belgium the last time we did this. That did not hit. So
not far off.
So you're not far off, man.
You're 1-1. You're 1-1. But I know you do tend to favor the underdogs. Who are you picking this week as your pick of the week?
Well, I'm glad we're talking about this. We've got a couple matches on Tuesday in the World Cup, and you know what? I think, everyone's looking at Japan as the sweet underdog story. I think there's a far better story, and that is the squad from Morocco. So this week, I'm going to be betting on Morocco to beat Spain on Tuesday.
Ooh,
I know, you're all shocked. But with the kind of betting odds that I'm going to be able to get, I think this is actually a very smart bet.
I like it.
You're definitely playing a long shot, but as you say, if it hits, you're going to make a big windfall here. The best odds you would find right now on BetStamp for Morocco straight up to win is plus 576. That's at Pinnacle. And just to explain, just to show you the difference here and what you would be seeing if you were betting on just the first app you went to, you could be settling for only a plus 500 if you were looking at William Hill, or even if you were looking at Bet Victor. So there's lots of different odds out there. The best place to find the best odds are always at BetStamp. So if you want to join us this week, if you want to follow Elliott down a very dangerous slope, pick Morocco. You can download the BetStamp app for free. And please, when you sign up, use the code ORDINARY so that they know we sent you. To always get the best value when you are betting, choose BetStamp. All right, on to topic 2. All right, topic 2. We haven't had Braydon with us for a few weeks, and so we wanted to jump back in. Obviously, we're partway through a good portion of the way now into the regular season of the NHL. We wanted to get Braydon's thoughts on the Edmonton Oilers. And Elliott, I know you have been to a couple games in the last week, so your expert eye has actually been in the building. I'm sure you've been picking up lots of little nuances and things that they've been doing, to adjust matchups and schemes and whatnot from actually being able to be in the building. Much different. A couple weeks ago, I gave you some hot takes. Braydon, I wonder if you've got any hot takes so far this season, any strong opinions on the Edmonton Oilers season?
Yeah, I do. I do have a lot of strong opinions. I can't quite recall all of your hot takes, one of which being probably around Jack Hamill and the success that he might have. That's not happening, and that's a huge bust. That's really unfortunate. I think I'm of the mindset that it will come around. It's so hard to watch a guy that you just paid, $5.5-6 million, just let in beach balls game in and game out. And it's nice to see Skinner's been able to ease a little bit of that bleeding, but not enough. You're still relying on a rookie to really be the guy. So that's one of them. Goaltending is a sore spot. When we talked about this on an episode a while back of the sports media in Edmonton around, it's just all terrible and it's not going well. And it's like, that only ever happens when they lose. And then they have an amazing game against, the Canadiens or whoever. And it's like, oh, yep, looks like they're ready for the playoffs. So, just being around all of that's really, really frustrating. I wish that the culture in the city was a lot more focused on the positive, the successes, the things that are happening. I'm impressed by Bouchard's play. Although, here's a hot take: can the guy shoot around pads? Every time he takes a shot, even a pass, it gets blocked. So once he figures that thing out, I think he's going to be scoring at quite a pace. Beyond that, it's nice to see that Connor and Leon are up to their magic, scoring 43% of all of the Oilers scoring this season. And we're fortunate that they're both healthy. That's just it, right? Like it would be absolutely devastating if something there happened, because we've already lost an important piece in Evander Kane, and Yamo's been out. Ryan McLeod's been out a few. This kind of gets into the time where injuries and illnesses and whatever have you starts to come into play. So the depth of the roster really starts to show. And I think our fourth line against the Montreal Canadiens is our top line in the HL. It's not what you want, but it's just this is really, really when you start to see some of the holes or the pieces that need some help.
Elliott, any hot takes so far? As I said, you were in the building. Anything you picked up there?
Yeah, I think for me, the big thing is seeing a bunch of guys that are really, really close. Puljujarvi is really, really close. The skills is still not there, but when you watch him on the ice and what he's doing, he's causing far fewer mistakes than he was in the past. And I really think, I know that there's been lots made of how much he got paid and everything that went into that. But I do have to say, I think we're starting, there's a player there, and just watching him sort of play in the top six has been really, really exciting. And I think that there's an opportunity there. I know it feels like we've been waiting forever, but we have to let people develop. And I think we're almost there. The other thing I would say is that I feel like there is definitely the Edmonton Oilers penalty kill is really taking a hit, and I'm not sure what it is. I don't know if it's the lack of Keith, or teams have figured them out, or it's the changes that are down the middle. I know they're dealing with some injuries as well too, but what started as what felt like, oh, maybe it's a slow start to the season and they'll figure it out. Their penalty, for as good as their power play was last year, their penalty kill was really important to them. And I think we're seeing the impact of that that happening right now. And that to me is concerning and needs to get sorted.
Yeah. One way to have a better penalty kill, don't take freaking penalties.
Also that. Fair enough.
Yeah, but at the same time, no team in the NHL goes without
it's going to happen.
So,
of course.
I think one of the big takeaways I had the last time we spoke was that I believe I was sort of, I wasn't trying to suggest that Jack Campbell was a disappointment thus far, because I actually don't think that that's fair. I think that when you look historically at goaltenders who've made changes to the team, like to a new team, there are sort of two extremes. They're either instantly phenomenal there and everything just clicks, or they regress and have to adjust to a new system of defense in front of them. And that tends to be, I think, the more common occurrence. And I think that's where Jack Campbell falls here. I don't think that we are watching a player who is playing badly just because he's not a good player, or somehow we were all tricked into thinking he was great when he had success in Toronto. I think that he was comfortable in Toronto, and it took a little time even there to get that place. I think that is the case here too. I think that the Oilers do not have a traditionally robust defensive core, and so he is often exposed in situations where, he is vulnerable. That is the case with both of the goaltenders the Oilers currently have. But the difference being right now, Stuart Skinner, when in, seems to be able to make the big save when necessary more often than Jack Campbell is. And that is really affecting the ability for the Oilers to find success. That being said, if you look at the last week of hockey for the Edmonton Oilers, they come out of it feeling probably pretty positive, having won several games. All of those games were from behind or having to come back in a close sort of 1 point or like one score game late in the third. Obviously the game against New York where they were down 3-0 watching too much soccer, 3-0 going into the third and stormed all the way back to score 4 unanswered. That's not sustainable. And that's the big thing right now for me as a fan of this team watching, is that they have to find a way to get leads and hold leads more comfortably and more successfully if they intend to put together, more successful periods of hockey here. When you look at that Montreal game, for example, they were gifted a really great opportunity from some bad discipline on Montreal's behalf. First with the cross check to the head, well, actually even before that with the original penalty, but then the cross check to the head that made it 4-on-3 or 5-on-3. And even still, they were only able to manage 2 goals on what was, by the end of it, about 9 minutes worth of power play time. That's not good enough for the Edmonton Oilers. And then even with that lead, they gave the lead back up before the end of the period, which is also not good enough. And so those for me are the biggest things that are concerning, let's say. I think Braden's right. There's lots of positives to be taken from how this team is playing. But when you are looking at a team with Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid in their prime, playing absolutely the best hockey they've ever played together, just the median, just good enough isn't good enough for this team. This team needs to be dominating. They need to be taking steps forward every single game. They need to be using every single game to help those players that, like Elliott says, are very close, get there, because close isn't going to be good enough come March. And I think that's the big thing right now that's missing. Obviously, lacking the size that Evander Kane adds hurts, but that isn't that can't be an excuse. That can't be. Every team has banged up players. You have to find a way to win more consistently, right?
I just want to point out though the addition of Klim Kostin, although a 23-year-old kind of coming in, proving himself. He added some intense size to our back end, or rather our third, fourth lines. And then Matthias Janmark, like there is the depth there. There is showing. There are players that are doing that. Is there enough? Is Dylan Holloway is he ready? Is he actually ready to be playing
No, he should be in
NHL right now?
I don't think so. I think I said this when I was talking with Elliott. I think he should be back in the AHL. I think that you're running the risk right now of stunting a player's development the way we did with Nail Yakupov or frankly even Nugent Hopkins, where you're asking a player who has only ever played at the top of a lineup to go back and play in a checking role. He's never done that before. He doesn't know how to do that. And he frankly shouldn't be being asked to do that. He should be playing on the top line in the AHL and scoring. That's what he should be doing.
Yeah. I mean, and I can't agree with you more. I mean, there was a moment I looked up at the clock and they track ice time for players. Holloway was on the ice to start the third period or something like that. And he'd been on the ice for 3 minutes and 50 seconds in the game. I don't know if
that's not helpful.
No, and unfortunately, he is the victim right now of the cap crunch the Oilers are in, where they just don't have enough bodies with the contract numbers that they need to be able to, play enough players in the NHL without somebody on an entry level deal, and that's the challenge. So, barring a trade, barring something changing from the cap perspective, I think we're gonna continue to see him in that role. And as I say, I do worry about what the future risk of that is. Interesting point on what was his name, Braden?
Klim Kostin.
Kostin, yeah. I wanted to call him Clint Kostin, but it's Klim Kostin. He apparently will not make the trip south of the border in a week's time, the 12th and 13th, because he is working on a temporary work visa, and he needs to go to Calgary to get a permanent work visa or a long-term work visa approved. So he will play the remaining home games here for the Oilers, but he can't cross the border under the current work visa because it has expired. So unfortunately, some paperwork is standing between him continuing to play with the Oilers, barring that. I'm sure that they have lawyers and whomever else needs to sort of make sure that paperwork gets dealt with. But from the sounds of it, it won't be done before the 15th of this month. So we will see him out of the lineup for unforced reasons, I suppose, on the 12th and 13th. Anyway, just an interesting note, sort of the things you don't think about when we're dealing with hockey. And yet somehow it feels very on brand the last couple of years when we've been dealing with cross-border play and vaccines and all that kind of stuff. This one's literally just paperwork.
I heard a funny story about him when he got traded. I don't know if you guys heard this. He got traded. He was like, I'm kind of excited to go to the Oilers when he found out it was Edmonton. I'm like, why? He's like, well, one of my good buddies playing there, Dmitry Samorukov. They're like, oh, that's the guy who's going the other way.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, to be traded for the guy you wanted to go play with is great. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. All right, let's just wrap this topic up with this, Braden. Where we are right now or whatever, but considering we've seen some positive signs from the Evander Kane side of it. He was on the ice the other day, just taking some reps to keep those legs in shape and all of that kind of stuff. We don't expect to see him back before February. Do you expect between now and then that the Oilers will go and make a deal, or are they going to play the long game here, see how Kane is when he returns, and make any potential deals at the deadline moving into a playoff push?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm glad you asked, because it's something I've been thinking about a lot of. How do they do that? How do you do that with assets that aren't actually producing very well? Like I talked about some of these depth players that have had some success so far. The guys that you want to be able to package or move, if they're playing at base level, you're not getting the kind of value you need to bring in something that's actually effective for the team. So it's kind of a cat and mouse, or a catch-22 of you need a player to play well in order to move them. I'm hoping that they can sort something out. There's a few options, I think, on the, Chychrun's name's been out there. That's not going to help your forwards, but and then you got to look at some of the teams that are not proving success right now. I'm thinking about Chicago. I'm thinking about even the likes of Vancouver, teams that need to be moving out some players. I want to hedge my bets and think that these things are going to happen by the deadline, or closer to the deadline rather. But it all depends on how the team plays moving forward. They've got to find a bit more success to make it an easier thing for Holland to do.
Elliott, what do you think? Do we see a deal before the deadline, or do the Oilers just try to continue to hobble along with what they've got?
Well, there'll definitely be a deal before the deadline, particularly if they're in it, because that's what general managers do to show.
I mean, at the deadline,
yeah,
or
they can't
before, is
after
what I'm
the
saying.
deadline.
Yeah, I think there'll be something, but I just I don't have a lot of faith right now that there's really a lot of movement. The other thing is Edmonton's disadvantage because everyone knows their cap situation and where they're at, and so that makes dealing with them, it's tough to get a fair deal. You know,
Very good point.
we've
Very
seen
good point.
that plague Edmonton in the past. So
Yeah. I would say I would not be surprised if we didn't see a smaller move. I think that there is a lot of concern about the size on this team. You know, the very kind of player that they are missing right now is like a 2016 Zach Cassian. Like that's the kind of guy, or a Patrick Maroon, where they just need a guy who's going to go to the difficult places and make it difficult to play against, who's not looking to fit in on the top line with Connor, who doesn't need a bunch of minutes, but a guy who can go and chew some minutes, maybe play on that penalty kill that we've seen struggle a little bit, but more importantly, go to the messy places. Look, it's great to see Jesse Puljujärvi in front of the net, and he does a very good job creating space because he is a big body, but he is not a mean player. He is not a tenacious, aggressive player in those spaces the way like a Vander Kane is. When Vander Kane goes to the front of the net, people feel him there. You know, he makes himself big. He knows how to go to those places. And there's a lot of guys like that in the NHL. We're not looking for somebody who's going to put in 25 goals. We're looking for somebody who might put in 10. You know, the names I would think of are, and I don't know how this one fits considering all of the other, chemistry issues that may follow it. But like a guy like a Ryan Reeves, a guy who's successfully played on very good teams, but knows his role and plays his role really well. A guy like Wayne Simmons, who obviously is on the outs in Toronto, but is looking for one more chance at chasing a cup. He's got a good, a bit of a decent deal for the Oilers if he could fit in there, but he also has the pedigree to go and be able to play, solid third line minutes. He would know his role. He'd go and play his role. And yet he would, muck it up when necessary. I'm not looking for a bully or a goon.
McEwen, yeah, sure.
No, I'm just looking for a guy who's able who's not going to back down from any fight in this, from any pushback in this league. And there are teams, I think, right now that look at the Edmonton Oilers and go, if you can clog up the middle and make it difficult for them to score off the rush, you can beat them. The Oilers obviously are a very skilled team. They lack a little bit of that size, and without a Vander Kane, I think that they are at a disadvantage. So those would be the kind of guys I would think might be on Holland's wish list.
It's funny you say Reeves, because they were on his on that list before he got moved. He already got moved. I mean, he's now with Minnesota, and I think he's going to stick with them for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and I think that's right. But those are the kind of players. I didn't mean him specifically. I just
for sure. Those are the kind. But it doesn't have to be that size. Like if they still do that, does it have to carry that kind of weight? Like I'm thinking, does a Max Domi make this team better?
That's another good example. That's a good name, because again, you're not looking for him to be, a skilled player up the middle. You're looking for him to be a physical, influence when he's out there. And again, what's interesting is that like there are guys on this team right now in Edmonton who could very easily be playing that role. They just don't. Like Warren Fogle is a big guy. And look, Warren Fogle has actually had a very good season on the whole. Yeah. He's put in some goals. He's been very offensive when he's had his opportunities, but he's just not truculent, like he's not that kind of guy. And I think the Oilers have lacked that sandpaper. I'm not looking for an old fashioned fourth line you send out there to bruise guys up. I'm looking for a little bit more grit that's going to win you a few more puck battles when you really need it, Oh
my God. Imagine a Jonathan Taves in front of the net. That'd be unreal.
I do want to note, I think you're right, Jordan. I just note, this team is also pretty banged up too. Like hypothetically, that could be a role from a McLeod, and that we're not seeing that right now. Yamamoto, it has a way to get under people's skin and steal the puck in the corner. He's hurt right now too. We are missing some of that. What you're looking for is also
Yamamoto doesn't come up to most players' navels in the NHL.
I know, but he is.
Yeah, yes, he will go at his body. He will go at their navels if he has to.
And look where it's got him.
There's no one that's going to go.
Look where it's got him.
It's got him.
I'm sorry, but we should not be asking. He's injured. We should not be asking Kyler Yamamoto to be our physical threat. I'm sorry. That's silly.
We've gotten Darnell Nurse, and we paid him $9 million to do it.
I remember someone
he's
saying
a defenseman who chews minutes.
Injury prone, and two other guys saying that wasn't going to be the case.
Well,
he's hurt right now.
He's hurt right now. That's right. All right, let's leave it there. That's topic 2. Topic 3 this week is brought to us by the MCU and Me podcast. The newest podcast to join the Ordinary Podcasting Network is an awesome deep dive into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Here's their trailer.
Hey, I'm Sayer, and I love Marvel.
And I'm Kaylee, and I love someone who loves Marvel.
And we're watching through the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, or MCU, in release order.
There's another order.
For Kaylee's first time.
And Sayer's 85th.
Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find MCU.
And me!
Sayer's obsessed.
And Kaylee's the best!
MCU and me.
Okay. We're going to do hats off. We haven't done it in a few weeks. So this, for the uninitiated out there, is where each one of us takes our hat off to somebody around the sporting world who deserves a little bit of praise and credit. I will go first. I would like to take my hat off to soccer legend Pele, who unfortunately is in the hospital right now. He is considered by many to be one of the greatest soccer players of all time, if not the greatest, obviously a legend among legends. At first, when this story broke, there was a lot of concern because he has been being treated. He's undergoing chemotherapy, fighting cancer. And there was a lot of concern that perhaps things had turned on that front. It was later revealed by the family that this is actually a lung infection unrelated to the original cancer. So hopefully he's able to make a full recovery from this. A lot of people expecting that he will. It was an interesting statement, I thought, from his family, though. They said he is sick, he is old, but at the moment he is there because of a lung infection. And once he feels better, he will go home. So they're obviously trying to push back against the, oh my God, Pele's going to die. Look, whether that's what the narrative was. It was like, oh my God, Pele's on his deathbed. Look, he's not on his deathbed, but he is not doing well. So I wish him all the best. Look, Pele is a legend. He's one of those players that I think often gets underappreciated in the North American side of sports when we talk about the greatest of all time, in their sports. Pele is right up there. He's a humanitarian. He was an absolute amazing soccer player. Go online, go YouTube some of Pele's goals. He's up there with the Maradonas and some of these other players they were on just another level, while everyone else around them was just left in confusion and utter disbelief at what he was capable of doing with a soccer ball. So we wish him a speedy recovery. Hopefully he will be back out of the hospital and back to fighting cancer, and that will be the only fight he has, and hopefully he will win that fight too. My hat goes off to the legend Pele. Elliott.
Yeah, well, we're on the topic of the best to play their game. This is one that I've been sitting on for a while, but we haven't done a hats off. So I was very excited to congratulate Matthew Essex, who is the 2022 croquet world champion. He beat a competitor from Great Britain.
Jesus Christ.
Croquet? Like the garden game?
Yeah.
Oh.
So if you have not seen this, and I don't know how you haven't seen this because this is really important sporting news.
Fantastic.
The shot that Matthew Essex makes is actually a jump shot over his opponent's ball as a final shot. And when you're watching the best, the absolute best of someone doing something that they love, that's really what you get to see when you see Matthew.
Would you say he's the Pele of croquet?
I don't know, but he is right now. He's the world champion. He's from the States.
Wow.
So traveled across to do it. It's really quite, it just, really profound victory and really important thing in the sporting world. And I just wanted to highlight it here.
Elliott, I think we might have to launch a new podcast on this network that's just like Elliott Tanti takes on obscure and unknown sporting events. Like, this is fantastic.
Catching up on croquet.
All right. Braydon, who you got?
That's fantastic.
But you won't top that.
Well, I won't top that, but I do want to tip my hat to 4 young gentlemen. One, namely Jake Chason, Edmonton Oilers prospect, and a member of the Brandon Wheat Kings. He and 3 other team members were out in Brandon of the weekend, came across a man who was suffering and struggling, looking down at the edge of a bridge, and they reached out to him to ask if he needed any help, to support him, asked if he needed anything. They were able to provide some assistance to this man, and just really proud that those young men did that, and proud that specifically Jake Chason represents the Edmonton Oilers. That's what you want to see from 4 young men representing hockey as well as their community abroad.
Fantastic. It is a great story if you haven't read it already. All 3 interesting stories. Well, thank you, Elliott, for a great and interesting show. Everything's interesting today. Look, if you haven't already, please go check out our website, ordinarypodcasts.com. We have a brand new show this week. You just heard an ad for it before topic 3 there. MCU and Me is a brand new show on the Ordinary Podcast Network. You can find out about that. You can find out about our basketball show, Backyard Basketball, which Braydon hosts. We got football. We got a little bit of everything. Go check out the website if you haven't already. And if you haven't already, also, please subscribe to this show. We would love your support. Leave us a review. Leave us a comment on Instagram, whatever. Just we appreciate you, listeners. Thank you very much. And that was Hat Trick. Hat Trick is a member of the Ordinary Podcasting Network. It's produced every week by Jordan Dowler Coltman and Braydon Dowler Coltman. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thanks for listening.
You didn't even thank me. You just thanked Elliott.
Oh, nice. Sorry, bud. Thanks.
The Ordinary Podcasting Network wishes to acknowledge that the lands on which our conversations take place include Treaty 6 territory, the traditional meeting ground and home for many Indigenous peoples, including the Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, and the Nakota Sioux peoples, as well as the unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations.
We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations, and we extend our appreciation for the opportunity to live, create, and share stories on these territories.
The Ordinary Podcasting Network intends to engage in conversations and dialogue which acknowledge that reconciliation is not a destination, but a journey, and that we remain committed to practicing our craft in a decolonized space.